And then
Yes.
so you can see that.
Yeah.
Shweta, maybe you can take over, introduce yourself, and then ask Arjun to introduce himself and all that, and then kind of start off the session. I will go ahead and do the needful for sending these links to everyone and all that. Okay,
It's
Sure,
peace.
sir,
Sure.
sure.
take over.
Hi Arjun, and I'm Shwetab, and hi everybody else
Hello,
too.
Shweta.
My name is Shwetab. I'm from BITS Pilani, Hyderabad campus, from the 2010 batch, a dualite in MSc Economics and a BE in Electronics and Communication. And I'd like to welcome one and all to the session. And I'd like to request our guest today, Mr. BB Arjun, for his introduction.
Hello, everybody. My name is Arjun. I graduated from BITS Pilani Hyderabad campus in 2012. So I've actually been working for the past close to 2 years. So I've been working at a firm called Premji Invest. It's actually Mr. Azim Premji, the chairman of Wipro. It's his family investment office. So it basically manages his personal wealth. The fund size is close to $2 billion. So this AUM, this asset under management value, is invested in both public investments and private equity. So I've been working here for the past year and a half, and I'm actually presently kind of making a shift. I'm moving to the IFC of the World Bank Group. So it's the International Finance Corporation, if you want to know the expansion. So it's actually a part of the World Bank which deals with its social investments, that is investments into areas like health, education, agriculture, manufacturing, and other aspects which basically have an agenda to develop the economy of developing countries. So that is a role which I'm going to go into towards the beginning of April. So that's kind of my gig or my scenario right now. So I think we can just go ahead with the question and the question session.
All right, thanks a lot for that very good intro, Mr. Arjun. And one thing I was going through while going through your LinkedIn resume is that it is
Yes.
full of all the inspiring stuff in finance. So one very
Okay.
general question
Yeah, sure.
from an engineering background, that you have a
Yes.
mechanical engineering degree, if I'm not wrong.
Yes. Yes. Correct.
So from there, where is what inspired the shift, or how were you able to jump so efficiently into the vast world of finance?
Okay. Okay. So probably I'll just go a few years back, down memory lane a bit. So I did my engineering, as you said. So towards the third year of my engineering, as I think most of engineers feel, they do want to kind of test out other fields in the world as well, like finance consulting and whatnot. So during the course of that, I think the turning point, or the thing that helped me the most, and I think that I the exact aspect that I would also encourage other people to look out for is a good internship, because at BITS we have this practice called or this 6-month internship program called Practice School. So I spent 6 months at Morgan Stanley in Mumbai. So that kind of set the tone for a career in finance. To be very honest, I went ahead with Morgan Stanley because I wanted to try finance out. I have not done too many electives as such in college. Probably security analysis and portfolio management is the only finance-based elective I've done in college. But when I did secure a 6-month internship at Morgan Stanley, I actually just wanted to test the waters at finance. I didn't exactly go with the intention of directly making a career in finance. But I must say those 6 months helped me a lot, not in the direct sense of job wise, because my work was probably not core finance, but in the sense of exposure. Because when you work in a financial organization, you just get exposed to people who do various activities. Like, I mean, I came to know about the existence of, say, the CFA qualification there only, about the FRM qualification there only. So basically, I had a nice orientation there as to what opportunities do exist in the field of finance. Let it be investment management, let it be trading, let it be brokering, let it be equity research. So though I didn't learn anything particularly in these dimensions, I got an orientation of sorts. Then using given that Morgan Stanley or any brand of that sort like has a good name in the market, I kind of just went ahead with that as that when I applied to firms. So during the course of I didn't actively search. I just passively searched for jobs in finance after my internship. So that was when I kind of saw an opening at Premji Invest, which is the family office of Mr. Azim Premji. So I had applied, and even when I did apply, I get the feeling that I got selected primarily because of the Morgan Stanley internship. That was one thing that kind of was which held me in good stead. Apart from that, I think to a certain extent, if you are making a transition, I did not have the electives. Probably that would have, if I did have the electives, I'd say that was the reason. But then point is that at that point of time, I did not. Another aspect was my CGPA at that point of time was close to 9. So I think that also kind of helped me to actually get through to Premji Invest. So two primary reasons are an internship at Morgan Stanley and a good CG. Because frankly, as soon as I entered Premji Invest, I kind of learned my bread and butter of finance and Excel or any financial tool there only. So for me, my entire learning curve has been primarily on the job. In fact, I gave my CFA level 1 year after working at Premji Invest only. So just to show how effective the on-job learning was, I didn't have too much time to study for CFA level 1 as such, because I mean the work schedule is pretty hectic. I think if any of you want to enter finance, one thing which you have to, one assumption I'm assuming that everyone has to keep in themselves is the work hours are going to be long in the beginning of your career at least. So with that being the case, I could not study for CFA at all. I mean, I kept my preparation till the last month. I probably didn't go through I didn't even go through the entire syllabus once till the last month. Then I just like took 2 weeks off from work and I did my primary studies then. Then I just observed that the CFA curriculum itself was like very, very closely related with what I was actually doing for the past year. So that way I was able to clear CFA level 2 without, I mean, with those 2 weeks of preparation suffice. But that was only because my entire work for the past year was primarily very much in tune with the CFA curriculum. So I completed my CFA level 1 last year. That is last June. Then as time went by, I did get some good exposure at Premji Invest with respect to different flavors of investment. That is public investments, that is investing in Indian capital markets. With respect to private equity investments, that is acquiring stakes in budding Indian firms which haven't yet gone public. Or even aspects like a few aspects of trading and a few aspects of fund of funds and a few aspects of say mutual fund investments. So basically, a lot of flavors of investments. I received exposure in these domains at Premji Invest. Then after all of this, I just felt that at least in my firm, the thing was that if I had to kind of go one level above, I needed an MBA. So there was no chance of getting better work at my firm because I would need to get promoted essentially, but that promotion would be possible only with an MBA. So what I thought was probably I'll try in another firm where I can probably get a better standard of work without an MBA itself, because I just felt that I'd want to work a bit more before going for my higher studies. So in that endeavor, I had applied to the IFC of the World Bank Group, and I kind of got my offer towards the end of December. So right now I'll be joining the World Bank Group, and hopefully I'll be doing work that is slightly more related to that is definitely a level higher of what I did at Premji Invest. So that's kind of been my story so far. So I think the key takeaways are definitely to break in things that can definitely help you are a good internship at a high brand. A good CGPA definitely helps because you are from an engineering background. So basically, if you would need to convince them that probably you have the potential, you have the grasping power, you have the ability to think quick on your feet, to grasp new concepts. So that is kind of very easily expressed through CGPA. I mean, you could have probably a not great CGPA and still be good, but I'm just saying that it's easier for people to get convinced at organizations if they see a higher CGPA. And definitely having electives would also definitely help. But then probably I'm not the best person to ask for that because I haven't done too many electives myself from college. So I think that kind of summarizes how to break in. Once you break in, I think it's a question of just finding the particular branch of finance that you are very much interested in. So breaking in, I think, is the major issue. After people break in, then they figure it out for themselves. So I don't think that's a problem.
Thank you for a fantastic answer, Mr. Arjun. And
Okay.
there was one very obvious question here. Does
Yes.
networking actually help?
Again, like the fact is, it's a pretty broad question. I'm pretty sure if you ask different people, you're going to get different answers. Networking definitely does help. I must say that the finance world. I mean, even my boss has told me that the finance world is actually it's a pretty small world. I think all of us know that, and it has. I mean, there are a lot of smart people in this world. So when there are people of such comparable talents with respect to smartness, with respect to financial acumen, with respect to business skill, or skill to identify how businesses grow and how they function, the thing that can provide you an edge at times is definitely a relationship that you build. So I would definitely endorse the fact that that relationship building is something that can definitely get you in and that can help you advance through quickly across ladders. But having said that, I think I must also acknowledge the fact that in my case in particular, I have not exactly used any relationships. I mean, I have built relationships during the course of my past 2 years or past 3 years since college with the alumni when I was in college, and with respect to other people in finance during my 2 year stint at Premji Invest. But I haven't directly used them as of yet. I'm just telling you that as a fact. So even the jobs I've applied for, they have primarily been openings posted, and I've just sent in my resume to the HR of that particular organization if I know that there is an opening. So finally, to summarize, I think to get the best of both worlds, I think it's always good to have contacts in an organization, but I think you must also understand that the effectiveness of that contact is only to inform you as and when there's an opening in that organization. Because sometimes, just like for example, if for example, if I know someone very well, no matter how hard I try, I cannot get that person into my organization if there isn't an opening. But on the other hand, if I know a person and there is an opening, then I'd probably take the effort to tell that person personally that okay, there's an opening, you can apply in my organization. So I think again, my personal opinion. So contacts will not probably get you a job, but they could get you something like an interview, or they could get you something like, or they can just get your resume inside the direct pool for consideration. So that way, I think you should all work on building your contacts, but do not rely on them. Probably work more on work a lot on building your skill sets as such, and basically get through the normal process. But then, as I said, the good thing about having contacts is and having good contacts is they will tell you whenever there is an opening. So whenever there is an opening and you apply, obviously your chances of getting in are way more higher. So that's my opinion.
Thank you for the reply, Arjun. One very natural question again was, when you started to, when you started to build your interest in the financial world, when you made up your mind, finance in mind, or you just stepped out with, I want to do finance, but you did not realize what exactly in finance you wanted to do, or did you have an idea beforehand?
Exactly. So even I told you when I stepped inside Premji Invest, even when I did when I went for my first day at Premji Invest, I must say I probably knew very little about finance. I mean, probably even about basic financial statement analysis, like how to interpret ratios from balance sheets, from P&L statements, from cash flow statements, or like basically doing any kind of financial analysis I had learned over there. So frankly, at least I must acknowledge that I found my feet over there. That is, given that I was exposed to so many avenues of public market investing and private equity, which I mean, private equity is definitely a segment of investment research or investment management that appeals to me a lot. So I mean, given that I was exposed to all those, I kind of found the areas which appeal to me. So I must say that probably I have taken that is an informed decision to establish a career in finance only probably after a year of having spent working in the finance sector. So I've kind of found my feet over the last year. So now I have decided that okay, I'd like to pursue investment management itself. So I was in Premji Invest, which is essentially a buy-side firm. So basically, I think just to give a quick indication, there are basically two ends of the equation. One thing would be a sell-side firm wherein you could get a job in investment management, or otherwise it could be a buy-side firm. So sell-side firms are firms like say JP Morgan or Credit Suisse or Morgan Stanley who could do equity research, and there are buy-side firms who are in association with these sell-side firms, both for trading purposes and for like block trade purposes, and also for research sharing purposes. So when you are on the buy side, you would be doing work to a certain extent similar to the sell side in terms of research, but the work that you'd be doing would effectively translate into investment decisions. That is, money will actually get invested. So I have past year I've spent at a buy side firm, and the work here definitely appeals to me a lot. So even the role that I'm moving on to at the World Bank, that would also be primarily close to a buy side, because it would be actually investing in ventures that you will see coming into fruition. But at my next role, it would be private investments only, because as I mentioned, I kind of am very intrigued by private equity and the kind of valuation methodologies and the dynamics that are in play in that particular vertical of investment management. So that's why I've kind of made the shift as well. Another reason that has aided me to make the shift. So in private investment, it's kind of like a different ballgame. So I mean, at the World Bank, it would be a combination of both private equity investments and debt investments. So that is something I'm, frankly speaking, I'd be looking forward to learn. It's something I've got a good flavor of at Premji Invest. So I'd probably be learning the ropes and kind of getting the true feel of a private equity deal or a quasi-equity or debt equity combination-based deal over there. So I found my feet, and that is primarily through spending time. Yeah.
Yeah, that was helpful. One very natural question that many students would have at this point, especially the third year and the fourth years, is that when you applied for places in the financial world, like one of them was Azim Premji, you must have applied to some other places as well, and without any solid relationship in the financial world. So how was your experience with places other than Azim Premji? I mean, the other places where you applied, what was the reply like, and what did they look for you?
Okay, yeah. So to be frank, again, at Azim Premji Investments also, like not a contact per se, but there was a Pilani senior who I didn't know too well, but I just knew him. That is probably just by name. So he was already working at Premji Invest, and in fact, I ended up working with him only mostly during the course of my 1.5 to 2 year stint. So actually, he had posted in actually one of our Bitsians group that there was an opening at Premji Invest. So I just sent my resume to the HR. So I think then again, it's not exactly contact per se, but then just the fact that I applied at the right time, and the fact that there was this other Bitsian or college alumni who kind of posted that there was a vacancy available at that point of time. I did aimlessly apply to a lot of places. At that point of time, I was even seriously considering consulting as a career option. So I did apply to a lot of top-notch consulting firms, but the fact is I did not know too many people, and even if I knew people, like I did know some people at consulting houses like McKinsey. There were some close seniors of mine, but the fact is they just weren't hiring at that point of time. So even though I knew someone who was already an employee, I wasn't able to even go for an interview just because the timing wasn't right. So I think one thing, I haven't done it myself, but probably trying to establish some kind of a sense of timing for different organizations. Like if you know that organizations have this recruiting cycle, so say they go to some colleges for recruiting and say there's a possibility that they might not be able to fulfill their requirements, in which case they would be looking at applications they receive in their in the stack that they probably receive through their website application process. So if you have an employee who can tell you that that's a point of time, then I think that is probably the best way to go. Because probably just aimlessly asking even if you have an extremely good network, aimlessly asking every person to just forward your resume might not do the trick unless he's like a very influential position. But I think that that falls into another category. Not everyone can probably know someone who's an engagement manager at McKinsey or something like that. So probably like say the person who I knew at McKinsey was say at a business analyst, business associate role. So he could forward my resume, but then the fact was that there just weren't openings at that point of time. But whereas in Azim Premji Invest, I just got to know about this senior who posted that there was a vacancy at his organization. So when I kind of sent my resume then there was a pretty competitive application process. The interview process went on for like close to 2 months, and then finally the offer came through, and then I joined after that. So that way, just to reiterate what I said before also, contacting, basically establishing a network alongside with there being a vacancy itself. Both of them have to come together. Otherwise, just having, especially just having a good network, sometimes won't do the trick if the timing is not right. So just keep actively asking people just to let you know as and when there's an opening in the organization, because that's the best way of entering, unless you have some kind of a extremely high level contact.
Okay, thank you, Arjun. Another very natural question is that with you having spent around more than 1.5 years now in the financial industry, and for someone who's went from an engineering standpoint, one natural question was, what is the skill set that you would suggest for for setting a good foot in the financial industry from the word go? The necessary skill set or necessary skills that you would endorse?
Yes. Okay. One thing which I don't know if a lot of people would acknowledge this, but then one thing that at least I feel frankly is that finance is definitely not rocket science. I don't know if it's a cliche or if it's something that people don't acknowledge too often, but essentially finance is something that I think, at least concept-wise, is something that can actually be easily taught. So which is why you see, generally, even if financial firms, they go for recruiting, they just go to, even if they do go for recruiting, they primarily go to probably institutes like, say, IITs. So that is primarily because of the conception that they feel that finance is a transferable skill. It's not like probably something like metaphysics or astrophysics, which is like very difficult to teach another individual. So what people are basically looking out for is a person who has that quick ability to grasp things, an ability to learn things very quickly and translate it into results, who can like pick up concepts and apply them in real life. So that way, I think, as I told you before, a good academic record, irrespective of how unfair it might sound, because there could be a person who's genuinely really good, but from a firm's point of view, it would always prefer a person who has a good academic record. Even though he's not exactly related to finance, if he's shown the ability to kind of do well at, say, a branch like engineering, which is kind of like, say, quant heavy. So that kind of gives the impression, I'm not saying it's true, but it gives the impression that that person has the ability to kind of do well in this kind of a role as well. So one skill set is generally a good academic record, irrespective. I'm not saying whether it could be whether you've done, it could be engineering, it could be, say, commerce, it could be, say, a bachelor's in business administration itself, it could be anything. But I'm saying a good academic record helps companies absorb people, because it's just a safer bet for them to make. Secondly, if you want specific skill sets, in the finance industry itself, I think it's kind of too obvious to even say that a CFA would definitely help. So I'm pretty sure that if I'd done a CFA before I joined PMG Invest as well, before I joined PMG Invest, I think my learning curve would have been way better. Already I'm pretty happy with the way my learning curve progressed during the course of the first, that is the 1.5 years I spent there. But then for a fact, it might have been even more better if I'd already equipped myself with a CFA qualification. So a CFA qualification also definitely helps. I'm saying in case you're lacking in the CGPA or academic record department, then probably the next best thing you could do would be to try to secure a CFA qualification. Apart from that, there could also be, I think there are also certifications offered by the NSE and BSE on capital markets and various other subtopics under the field of finance. Often, I think if you go to the NSE or BSE website, you can see regular updates on when and where they conduct these sessions. So even that would probably be another additional point to your resume. But then again, I've just told you my opinion. So the kind of the pecking order would be in the same order in which I mentioned. Because one thing I'm telling you, after having gone that side, all I'm telling you is when they recruit a fresher, they don't expect him to be an expert from day one. They expect him to have knowledge. If he has knowledge, great. If he doesn't have knowledge, then all they expect is him to pick up things very quickly and essentially have the ability to apply that knowledge rather than just possess that knowledge. So the fact is, application of that knowledge will probably come only if you've displayed it in another arena, which is probably displayed through your academic record. And probably one more thing, very important thing which I didn't mention, which is probably as important as academics, is something like a good internship. So if you've done a good and relevant internship, that actually shows that you've applied your knowledge, your finance knowledge, in a practical scenario. So even that is something that will definitely catch the eyeballs of any recruiter. So academics, good internship, a CFA qualification, supplemented by something like an NSE or BSc based qualification that you have. These are kind of the primary ingredients that that have the making of a resume that people would definitely consider for that is an entry-level position at an investment firm.
Thank you, Arjun. A question that arises is, how much do these certification programs actually help? See, because there are online certification programs running. There are many of them now, and there are off-campus certification programs running too. So, do they actually help in catching the recruiter's eye in the first go?
As I told you, I think I classified all these CFAs. Probably it's become kind of like a standard qualification. So I'm just mentioning that. Again, CFA does definitely help, but the issue nowadays, I think almost everyone goes for a CFA. So sometimes getting a CFA on your qualification list is kind of something that you want so that you just don't get left behind. Because the fact is, probably majority of the competition pool, which even say applies for a firm like Premji Invest, they do already possess a CFA. So that's something which would definitely help. But as far as other qualifications go, I'd classify probably all of them under another bucket, because they probably haven't gained as much standardized recognition. Like CFA is like a standardized qualification, which almost everyone in the investment field would know. But whereas if it's some other kind of online qualification, which it might be genuinely good, but the fact is the reach or the popularity of that particular extra qualification or extra degree or extra certificate course might not actually have reached the potential recruiter. So as a recruiter, I might definitely say there's a XYZ organization which is conferred, which you've entered a workshop into and you've passed successfully with flying colors. It would definitely be something I recognize and something I discuss with you in your interview or something. But something like, say, as I told you, internship, academic record, CFA, these are like established bodies or established organizations which confer all of these titles or scores or merits upon you. So these hold greater weightage for a recruiter. The other things also hold the greater the recognizability and the popularity, the greater the weightage. So I think apart from CFA, there's nothing as recognizable. So everything else I'd put in a bucket which would help you get the job, but it wouldn't be like it shouldn't be it could be, but in most cases it won't be the major driver or motivator behind you actually securing a job compared to the first three that I'd mentioned.
Okay, Arjun, asking you this personally from a like talking to a person who spent 1.5 years now working in this. What is a day like in the life of a investment manager or this thing at the Premji Invest? What is a day like in this kind of a profile?
Yes. Okay. So as I told you in the beginning, you're kind of like putting yourself in a field and a sector which would be extremely demanding from day one itself. So I'm assuming everyone is like anyone who enters this particular field is definitely not expecting a kind of balanced lifestyle, to be frank. So I think at the beginning of your career itself, your life would be heavily skewed towards a work-oriented profile, wherein you might also be spending weekends doing office work. Not all weekends, but then definitely some weekends. So if you want to know a typical work day, so at Premji Invest, at least, it was kind of on average an 8 to 8 kind of gig. So office began at 8 in the morning and it went till 8 in the night. So with reference to the kind of work that you do, again, a general trend in investment firms is that office is not very dense. That is, there aren't like too many people. Most offices are like they have a limited team size, and this limited team kind of works a lot to get the work at hand done. So during the course of 12 hours in a day, you'd be given tasks. That is, you would have your own work agenda with respect to work that you have to do for analysts who cater to different sectors, with respect to analysts who handle private equity investments, with respect to analysts who do trading analysis, that is technical analysis of the market, with respect to even analysts who take care of kind of viewing the macroeconomic scenario of India, of China, of USA, and major geographies of the entire world. So at an entry position, you could be exposed to one of these or all of these in different amounts. So when that happens, then it's up to you to kind of prioritize your work schedule. So when it comes down to that, you are basically given chunks of work, and you're kind of given deadlines as to when you have to complete it by. So it's up to you, and probably it's up to your prowess, up to your speed as to whether you can finish it off within a day's work, or whether you need more time the weekend to actually finish it off. So officially, I think no firm works on a Saturday or Sunday, but unofficially, I think at least half the office definitely does come in on a Saturday as well, to finish up the work that was actually pending over the course of the week. So with an 8 to 8 schedule, there are times when it could also probably overcross that. But basically, I think if you are good, you can definitely finish it 8 to 8 throughout 5 days, and kind of have the weekend for yourself, for your personal life and social life. But I'm saying apart from that, an 8 to 8 plus probably some time on your Saturday, that would kind of give you also some time to actually do work at your own pace, and thereby effectively complete work on time. Now, with respect to work-life balance, I'm just being frank with all of you because that is the true picture. So in this kind of industry, it definitely takes a hit, because if you're working 8 to 8 in a day, you generally get back home, you're probably really tired by then, so you just eat, and you just probably you could indulge in some kind of internet-based, I don't know, social media, or some kind of YouTubing, or any kind of random thing on the laptop, because you're really tired to do something outside. But definitely, Saturdays and Sundays, if you assume you're spending half of Saturday at work, the remainder of the weekend, if you have the energy to, then definitely that would be probably the time to establish the other side of life, that is the enjoyment side of work life. But definitely, I'm again reiterating this only just because it's kind of something which cannot be ignored. During the formative years of your career in the finance field, it's definitely gonna be there would definitely be a considerable amount of slogging and adhering to deadlines, and to finish activities within those deadlines, you would have to kind of stay back and go the extra mile. And that will only help you, because that will only help you improve your own skill set, improve your own experience, and thereby improve your entire outlook towards viewing businesses and evaluating companies. So it's going to be helpful to you, but the fact is that the pace is going to be extremely high. So just be ready for that and enjoy the ride. That's what I'd say, because I mean, all of us are at an age wherein we're probably supposed to slog it out, so that we can probably get to a good position later on in life. So get ready for the game and enjoy it. That's all I'd say.
Thank you, Arjun. Again, this thing I wanted to ask personally, that when you wanted to enter the world of finance, you must have had several fields there, like consulting, etc. And a lot of people even here at BITS or other engineering colleges are interested in things like consulting. So while your tenure of exploration of these kind of fields, what did you what did you learn in those phases of exploring all these fields?
Okay, to be very frank, again, this is my opinion. I feel that it's kind of impossible for me to rule out a field. Like, I am not going to tell you that I have chosen finance over consulting. I'm going to only tell you that I went into finance. I did a 6-month internship. I got some exposure. I did a job for 1.5 years. So over the course of the first year, I kind of understood that, yes, this is a field I like. But in the same token, I cannot say with such surety that I like that I do not like consulting, because like, for example, I've spent 4 years doing engineering. So the fact is, I think I'm in a position to say that, okay, engineering is not exactly my cup of tea. I might be decently good at it, but it's not something that I enjoy doing too much. So that is an informed kind of statement that I'd be making, that, okay, I would not want to do engineering. So now I've spent 1.5 years in finance. So again, I can make an informed statement saying that, okay, I do like finance because I've spent time over here. But with respect to consulting, other areas like consulting majorly, to be frank, even I'm not sure if I like consulting. I've heard a lot of stories, but the fact is everyone hears a lot of stories. You probably cannot get the true picture unless you actually experience it. So for people who are confused between consulting and finance, all I have to say is probably if you're able to get a gig in either of them, probably just try it out for a year, because both of them definitely do involve looking at businesses, evaluating businesses, they're not too similar, because finance is probably very much more specific. But I'm saying with respect to the kind of skill set or the kind of attitude, I wouldn't use the word skill set, I'd use the word attitude, the kind of attitude and the kind of grasping power and the kind of thinking quick on your feet element that is required. They are in a way similar that way. So consulting as an area, what I've heard about it is probably similar to what any of you might have heard about it. It's definitely a job wherein you would be actually helping businesses recover from a position wherein they're not doing so well. You'd be improving efficiencies. You'd be kind of suggesting ways wherein they can enter new product segments, target different target audiences. So all these are, again, very generic kind of statements. But I'm able to make only such statements because I've not done any internship, and neither have I worked in a consulting kind of environment. And probably I can never comment on consulting till I've actually spent a year at it. So all I can say right now is finance is definitely a very interesting field. I mean, for people who are slightly intrigued by quant, who like to understand businesses, who like to see businesses grow, who like to interpret the reasons behind why different businesses have succeeded, who kind of like to who like to crunch numbers and who like to basically gather meaning out of numbers, it's a very good field. So that way, I definitely recommend finance as a field that one should definitely try out. But with reference to it versus consulting, frankly, that's an answer which even I would like to ask someone who's, but I would definitely ask it to someone who's only experienced both. And those people are probably a bit rare to find.
Okay, and Arjun, one more question. Could you go into a bit more detail about the actual work done at Premji Invest? Like, how do you go about selecting the private equity targets?
Okay, yeah, sure. So again, I'll probably go a bit more in deep with this answer. So at Premji Invest, there were two verticals. One was the private investment vertical, and one was the private equity public investment vertical, and one was the private equity vertical. So the public investments vertical, basically, it invested in the Indian stock market. So with that being the case, it would basically be, we'd be tracking sectors. So for example, I could be tracking something like the oil and gas sector and the banking sector. So when I mean tracking, I mean that we would build financial models for these, for top firms and even mid-cap firms in these particular sectors. We would constantly interact with the management. We'd constantly interact with our own dealer networks, with even sell-side research analysts, and kind of gather an idea as to what plans these companies have for future earnings growth visibility, or for any kind of strategy that they have to differentiate themselves in the market. So this aspect would primarily involve a good amount of financial statement analysis, kind of tracking with each quarter how they've progressed, whether they've actually been able to meet expectations, whether their guidance has changed, whether their balance sheet has improved or deproved, whether their revenue targets with respect to what they released towards the beginning of the year, whether that is in line. So this is what I mean when I say tracking of a company. Basically tracking all its financial pulses and trying to identify whether it's on track of growth, or whether it's beaten the expectation, or whether it's kind of fallen short. So that is with the public investment side. With respect to private equity side, the work that I did was this. So this as in what I'd be telling you right now. So we'll basically receive a lot of proposals in various sectors, ranging from technology to consumer services to it could be anything, to agriculture, to processing. So amongst all these spaces, there are some spaces which are probably very niche. So there could be some space like say online insurance, for example. So that space is probably something that is growing slowly in India. It's not like very popular, because right now probably assume we are living in a state wherein people still use use insurance agents per se to get their insurance policies done. So when, say, there's an online insurance company that is seeking some kind of investment, the common link between different companies that are evaluated for private equity proposals are, all these industries are very niche industries. They are not like very popular industries. So when that is the case, the first thing that is done is an attempt to kind of demystify these industries. So for example, if it's an online insurance industry, for a fact, if you do some research, you will realize that it's a very popular trend outside India. So in the UK, it's like it's really big. So a majority of the insurance policies that are handed out online, and it's a very smooth process there. So basically, what I would be doing is I'd be kind of going back to the UK I'd be looking at the UK market. I'd be seeing as to how it's evolved over the past 10 years, seeing what made things click, what made things not click, whether, like, say, something like advertising helped a lot for these kind of companies, whether something like whether some particular differentiating strategy kind of helped companies grow a lot in this space and thereby led to the growth of the entire industry. So an initial kind of scanning would be a global scan of that particular industry in parts around the world. Not only developed economies like US and UK, but even developing economies like, say, China and Brazil. So these are like kind of, in a way, comparables to India. So you would see how that particular market has performed in countries like Brazil and China. So again, there you'll try to identify whether, okay, it could be possible that China is like probably India 5 years down the line. So if that's the case, then you can actually know as to what companies did, what mistakes they did, or what things they got right to get to the place where they are in. And then accordingly kind of establish a general set of not exactly to-dos, but kind of things that can make this kind of an industry click. Then kind of compare with the existing companies or the company that has probably asked for an equity raise, whether it's doing something that is in line with what global companies have done in order to succeed, whether its strategies are things that have been like tested in other geographies and have worked. But even if they've worked in some geography, like say UK, whether they worked in like analogous geographies to India, like say Brazil or China. So you basically do an initial first cut scan of the business entirely. So there's not too much financial analysis at this first cut analysis. You just look at the business and see what's made things tick and what's made them not. Then you end up looking at multiples. That is, say, P multiples or EV by EBITDA multiples or EV by sales multiples. These are basically valuation multiples at which public companies in that particular space trade in a global forum. So you look at that and you see how expensive or how cheap that particular kind of business is outside India. And then you try to establish a similar multiple for such a business inside India. Just give me one moment. If you could just give me a moment, I'm just running a bit short of charge, so I'll just get my charger. Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, just one moment. One moment. Sorry for that minor interruption. Hello.
Hello, Arjun.
Hello. Yeah, I'm back. Sorry for that minor interruption.
No problem at all, Arjun. Arjun, and now that you've told us in detail about your work at the Premji Invest, how is that different from your, about to come work at World Bank, or what made you think of a switch from Premji Invest to the World Bank?
Yeah, so I think I told you that. So the first cut was kind of a global analysis. Second cut was kind of like a company-specific analysis versus its global peers. So at Premji Invest, the thing is that my designation there was a research associate. So after a point of time, your contribution to the deal kind of ceased. So when, like say, as the deal progresses beyond a certain level, due to obvious confidentiality constraints and other things, so your involvement in that kind of a deal would decrease, which is in a way understandable because the people who I worked with at Premji Invest, they were people from like really good universities, like from Stanford and Wharton's. So initially during the initiation of a deal and during the screening of a proposal, at least my involvement was to a decent extent, that is a good extent. But as the deal progressed and as the legal aspects of the deal came in, or say the non-disclosure agreement aspect of the deal came in, or say kind of face-to-face negotiations came in, my involvement became a bit more limited in that aspect. So that way, as I told you, the only way I can get promoted to a level above what I was at Premji Invest was by doing an MBA. And I kind of wanted to spend more time in the field before I went ahead with an MBA. So with that in mind, I wanted to basically get to a role where I could probably see an entire deal go through its entire life cycle. So that was kind of the reason behind why I made the shift to the World Bank. So at the World Bank, I would be an investment analyst. So there, probably my involvement would be to a larger extent. So yeah, I would actually probably be able to involve myself more in, with when it comes to negotiations with potential clients with whom we are planning to invest in, with respect to basically the on-field visits that would happen and the due diligence that would be necessary to make a deal follow through, and also get some kind of exposure to the legal aspect of a deal to see what kind of what nuances of a deal are put in place towards the second leg of it. That is the more crucial leg of it. That is after you've kind of decided that you want this deal to happen, but what are the formalities and what are the legal aspects that are to be complied with. So that is something which probably I wasn't exposed to too much. So that is something which I look forward to learn to, because I mean, if you've seen half the movie, you'd want to see the remaining half, right? So I mean, probably not a great analogy, but in a very simplistic term, like that would sum it up.
Thank you, Arjun. Arjun, one more request from, I think, on behalf of every engineer who wants to break into finance. See, as you
Yes.
mentioned before, BITS has a system of practice school,
Yes.
which enables its students to take internships. So it's a, you know, as you also know, obviously, which is a very effective means
Yes.
of breaking out into the industry.
Yes, very much.
But
Yes, totally agree.
but the thing is, though there are some, you know, some of the most, you know, profound companies there, the thing is that most of the people are not able to get the, you know, get the required profile there for finance, or most of the people aren't able to, you know, match their interest with respect to what they are being offered there. So any hints for,
Okay.
you know, applying off campus? Any hints
See,
for applying off
another thing,
campus?
another thing which I think I should recommend. The fact is, you could break in. For example, I think you shouldn't probably be very choosy at the beginning of your career. Like, for example, assume you're getting a particular role at some brand. I'm just going to say XYZ, just because I probably wouldn't want to use any particular names. But say you're gonna get, say you get a particular opportunity at a really good brand name, but the profile is not exactly to your liking, but you do want to break into finance, and I think the best shot you have is to get that brand name on your resume, spend some time there, because when you make a shift towards any other firm, that brand name is something that will hold you in very good state. So even if it's some really good organization, but your work isn't exactly directly related to investment, management or equity research directly, if it has to do for that particular firm, then I think that's a good start, because even if your work isn't 100% core finance, even if it's like only a certain percent finance, the kind of exposure that you get there by speaking to people over there, by kind of having access to resources at that particular organization, I think that's something you should look out for. So if your question was not getting the profile of your choice, then I would say that probably don't be too choosy at the beginning, because once you get a good brand name on your resume, then you'll probably be able to make a choice. Till then, I just tell you to try to break into any financial organization, even if the role is not core finance, because that will kind of give you a platform to jump to probably a profile that you do really want, versus directly getting a profile that you want, which is obviously the best case scenario. But then I'm saying, if that's not possible, then probably this kind of halfway step wherein you get into just a really good firm and then move on to a good firm along with the good profile that you want. That is something which could happen. If your question is regarding getting into the finance sector at all, then for that, as I told before, the fact is the finance sector is not a very huge sector. So I think everyone acknowledges the fact that it's a pretty competitive sector. So that being the case, I think what everyone should putting efforts is something like something that should go on anyway. I think you should anyway look to talk to people, meet people if possible from different organizations, not with the intention of getting a job, but just with the intention of kind of basically getting to know them, getting to know what they do, just getting to know about the industry as a whole. Then I'm pretty sure if they view you as an interested candidate, I'm pretty sure that as and when an opening pops out, and when they know that you're a person who's like so much interested in finance, they'd get back to you. Or you could also probably inform them during the course of your conversations that if at all there is an opening, then please do let me know. I'd be happy to apply. So that way, spend spend time definitely on networking and creating passive relationships with people from different organizations who could probably let you know when there is an opening. And apart from that, I think the best thing to do would be to basically sharpen your skill set through qualifications like a CFA, and to kind of keep yourself abreast with anything and everything that can affect the market. Well, the fact is that anything and everything can affect the market, right from political to geological to sometimes even scientific, when it comes to say industries like say pharma or technology. So anything under the sun can affect the market, but then in a generic sense, kind of basically keep track of the economy, regularly read what's happening with the Indian market, with Indian monetary policy, with Indian fiscal policy. Get to know what are the different moving parts that kind of dictate how the economy of our country runs, and kind of also develop like a basic idea on what's happening in US, in Europe, in China in particular, because it's become a major player as far as global dynamics go. So focus on India and also get some kind of an understanding on what's happening in economies throughout the globe. So all these are like general facets that you definitely cannot acquire. Probably like if you get an interview call, it's not something that you can prepare for immediately. It's not possible to know how India has done over the past year by just reading about it in 1 week before the interview. So kind of basically gain this kind of, I put it like, the word that I'd use is some kind of an acumen, probably some kind of a finance acumen, wherein you probably have an idea about different events that are happening, and be in a position to kind of form an opinion, and simultaneously gain some kind of knowledge on different aspects which kind of turn the wheels of our economy in different ways. So in that way, general finance knowledge is something that you should probably accumulate always. Something like a CFA qualification is also something that will help you gain some kind of conceptual and technical foundation. Apart from that, something that you should probably just generally do is just try to establish contacts with people in different organizations who can let you know as and when an opening pops up. I think this is kind of, if you want me to put it in a structured way and a very generic way, these are the kind of three key points that you should do if you are an engineer who's just looking to break into finance for any kind of an entry role. If you've got an entry role in finance but you just don't like the profile, then I would still say just go ahead with it, give it a shot, get more exposure, and then with that brand backing you and that 1 year of experience backing you, you could eventually move on to a profile that you want.
Okay, thank you, Arjun. Arjun, we'd like a little word from you about your experience at the MSCI Risk Management Analytics Division.
Yes, sure. So at the MSI Risk Management Analytics Division, I worked for the client services team. So the MSI RMA division basically had two products. One was Risk Manager, one was BARA1. So these are two softwares. So to be frank, probably I think I'm a classic example of what I'm trying to preach itself. My role at Morgan Stanley Capital International was as a part of the pre-sales team. So what I did was I aided the team that pitched in products, these risk management analytics products, these financial tools, to potential clients. So we had clients from all over the world, from pension funds, from asset managers, to sovereign wealth funds, to even family offices. So all these family offices, they needed some kind of a tool to kind of analyze their investments and simultaneously manage their investments. So this kind of a tool, in more cases than not, is kind of heavily customized. That is, it's heavily customized to the consumer's requirements, and it also gets like very technical and intricate at times. And along with, and if as is applicable with any product that you're selling, there are a lot of like technological implications, a lot of legal implications that come along with it. So my experience at the RMA Risk Management Division at MSCI was in a sales team. So what I did was I was a part of a team that drafted proposals, pitching in the products. So if it was for say some kind of a pension fund, so we basically kind of explain the functionalities of that particular tool, say Risk Manager or BARA1, which could be used to the benefit of such a pension fund. The kind of functionalities or the kind of slicing and dicing or the kind of granularity to which you could analyze different investments, how all those could be used by these organizations. So I mean, I was probably here exposed to like probably almost every asset class under the sun, right from right from from basic mortgage-backed securities to asset-backed securities to any kind of swaps, to any kind of CDSs. So I basically kind of got a basic understanding of different asset classes that exist. There was even something called a Danish bond of sorts. So I just got a basic understanding of the kind of asset classes that did exist, and the kind of functionalities that Morgan Stanley Capital International's tool had that could help in kind of pricing these assets and could help in evaluating and keeping track of which asset is performing and which one is not. So again, reiterating the fact, this definitely had an undertone of finance. It had a lot to do with finance, but it was definitely not core finance. So while I did get exposure, I did not get, my work wasn't directly related to finance, but I did get, as I told you, some understanding of basic finance. I did speak to a lot of people who were doing their CFA, who had completed their levels of CFA, who strongly recommended it. I did get in touch. I was able to speak to people who were in other companies also, who were like friends of the of some of my colleagues at MSCI. So that way the gig was definitely a wholesome gig in the sense that it got me intrigued by finance, and it kind of gave me the confidence to, yeah, definitely this is a career I'd want to consider to do for the coming years.
Thank you, Arjun. Arjun, one last question to you, and
yeah, sure.
this is regarding something that a lot of people have. Besides the internship and besides this, the CFA qualifications, which are on paper documented prerequisites, any prerequisite that you'd like to suggest for a fresher entering into a financial world, in the form of maybe a software tool or a theoretical prerequisite that everybody should have for an effective interview or something, besides the general CFA qualifications or internships?
Okay. So I think conceptual tool, conceptual or knowledge-based tool, I think CFA and basically being in tune with what's happening in, say, the Indian economy or global economy is something that will help. When you speak about software tools, there are tools like Bloomberg, for example, that will definitely, knowledge of it will definitely help. And it's an amazing it's an amazing tool. There's also, I think, DataStream. There are a couple of tools out there. There's even a FactSet based tool that's available in the market. So I'm pretty sure all these tools, knowledge of these tools will definitely help. So again, these are things that can give you the edge. So these are things in addition, like say there are people. The fact is there are people with there is high competition, and there are people with competing profiles. So that being the case, some kind of awareness on how to use tools like say or any FactSet based tool or something like a Thomson Reuters based tool. So I think if you guys check out in the internet, I'm pretty sure you'll get some resources as to how these tools are. So the fact is, the things that you'll be the difficult part here is these tools have very expensive licenses. So it's possible that the licensing to use, I'm not sure of the exact amount, to be frank, but then just for hypothetical reasons, let's assume that one license of a Bloomberg tool costs say 10 lakhs. So I'm not sure whether people have access to actually go to places where they can learn that kind of a tool. But one thing I must assure you is, as far as on-the-job thing goes, it's something that you will eventually learn. So with respect to easiness on the job, these tools will be something that you will learn during the course of the job. That is not to worry. But with respect to kind of giving you an edge, I must say yes. These knowledge of such softwares which are aggregators of research or which kind of help you to analyze data and slice and dice them is something that which can definitely give you an edge during the interview process. Some tool like say Bloomberg, if you know how to actually create Excel sheets by extracting Bloomberg data and to kind of compare different companies or could perform a lot of performance analysis and peer analysis using Bloomberg, it's definitely a huge plus because the company is saving on that much time and effort to get you up and running. But at the same time, it gives you the edge, definitely, yes. But after you enter the company, it's something that you will definitely learn, and it's probably not too difficult to pick up. I'm pretty sure it's something that can definitely be learned during the course of your job.
Okay, thank you, Arjun. And this thing also, do like
yes.
Tool licenses like these are pretty expensive, as you said. But a
Yes.
lot of people do finance on Excel, which is a default tool with the Microsoft Office package.
So Excel is okay. Probably Excel is something I didn't exactly mention because I kind of okay. Probably it's my mistake. Excel is, again, it's kind of bread and butter. It's like asking someone who is going to type if they know English. So that way, knowing all Excel shortcuts, this thing, that thing, is something which I think you should definitely know as well. It's definitely a great skill to have, like being very quick on Excel and being able to basically your computer skills with Excel in particular. Excel is a beautiful tool, first of all. I mean, the fact is you can never probably fully appreciate its awesomeness. I mean, the kind of functionalities and things that you can do in Excel are like probably far beyond what we actually use it for. Even in any investment firm, I'm pretty sure no investment firm uses more than 5 to 10% of the actual functionalities that Excel offers. So that way, learning Excel is firstly an ever-growing process. I think you'll be learning new things about Excel for the next 15, 20 years in your career itself. But yeah, getting your base Excel skill sets in place, getting to know, say, your basic VLOOKUPs or indexes or matches, or getting to know how to build a few basic macros, not with coding per se, but how to record macros and how to actually implement them continuously. Basic Excel skills are probably something that can be learned through the internet or by attending any kind of course that is available in your city or any kind of certificate program. So those kind of skills will also definitely give you the edge, because you'll be able to you'll be able to save time and effort from the company's side, because they wouldn't need to spend time on you getting faster. You'd from day one be fast at using Excel. But one thing is that you would anyway you'll end up learning newer things in Excel each and every day during the course of the next few years.
Okay, thank you, Arjun. I'd like to thank you on behalf of the entire ERI team of mentees and mentors and the directors for taking out time for this session. And it was a really very enriching and inspiring chat session, man. And I'd like to thank you again for taking out the time.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Arjun.
Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah, the session was good. I just hope that a lot of people